So the Carolina Panthers are a pretty bad football team. They're the only team without a win yet this season, and it really just feels like nothing's working in Carolina. Now, there were a lot of eyes on Carolina this offseason because they had the first overall pick that they traded with the Bears to get, and then they went on to draft Bryce Young first overall. But man, Bryce Young has struggled this season. But it's not just Bryce Young. This whole team is really rough, and it's painfully obvious week in and week out. Now, over these past 2 weeks, there's some good things about the Panthers and some bad things. The good things is the Panthers have scored 20 plus points in back-to-back weeks. The bad thing is they've given up 42 points in both of those losses. Nobody said it's been pretty. The Panthers lost 42-21 to the Dolphins after leading 14-0 to start the game. I mean, at one point I was shook. I texted Jackson like, no way the Panthers are winning this game. There was a point in time where it looked like they maybe had a shot, but the Dolphins are just too good and they really shouldn't have been there in the first place. There really is an immense talent gap between these two teams. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Panthers are the only winless team in the league. And to make matters even worse, they don't even have the first rounder that they would have at this upcoming draft because they traded it to the Bears in that deal to get the first overall pick. So it's not like you're tanking for anything right now either. No matter how good or bad you are, it just either hurts or benefits the Bears. Now, it's not like the Carolina Panthers have been completely incompetent in every single week of this season. They have been somewhat competitive in a couple of games. They lost 21-13 to the Vikings in week 4, and that was technically a one possession game. Then they lost to Seattle 37-27, who I think Seattle's a solid team, even though they did lose today. Then they barely lost 20-17 to the Saints in week 2. That loss doesn't look great. The Saints aren't that great of a team this year, even though they absolutely clapped the Patriots last week. And then they lost to the Falcons 24-10 to open the season. So yeah, they've been somewhat competitive in these games, barring these past 2 weeks, because these past 2 weeks have just not been good for them. There was a point in time where you could have even convinced me that the Panthers had somewhat of a shot of winning the NFC South just because of how bad it was projected to be in the offseason, but really at this point, it's anybody but the Panthers division to take. Like, if somehow the Carolina Panthers win the division, something had to go really wrong for every other team. Like, they had to kidnap all the starters. It's just not happening. This really isn't the year of the Panthers, but I mean, that's okay. There really isn't enough talent on this team to really be competitive in this league, at least with the top end of it, and it's making things really difficult for Bryce Young. Now, it's really no secret that Bryce Young hasn't really looked that great this season. With that being said, I feel like what he's done this season so far hasn't been very out of the ordinary for a rookie quarterback. It's very typical for rookie quarterbacks to struggle when they get into the league. Yes, you have those anomalies that come into the league and have some success super quick. A guy that I'll point out now that really hasn't made anything easier for the judgment of Bryce Young's play so far this season is CJ Stroud. Him being significantly better than anyone could have anticipated him to be has definitely hurt the perception of Bryce Young this season. But again, he's just a rookie quarterback. I think what's interesting though is if you remember back to the pre-draft process, it was even reported that the Panthers wanted CJ Stroud instead of Bryce Young for a while. Now, coming out from all that, it sounded like Frank Reich was the one who wanted CJ Stroud, but owner David Tepper didn't, and they ended up going with Young at the draft. Now, I will say this, I do think CJ Stroud has looked significantly better than Bryce Young has looked this season, but I really don't think that the Panthers are a team built for really any quarterback to succeed in. It really isn't that talented of a team. Still though, Bryce Young has still managed to show some flashes of the quarterback that he could be. I mean, you could even say that he has looked kind of better in each week of the season. He just went 23-38 for 217 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions. That's huge. In week 5, he threw for 3 touchdowns before not even having more than 1 in a game. But of course, the rookie mistakes were there. He also threw 2 interceptions. It was his second 2 interception game, the first being in week 1. So far, he's played in 5 games. You know, he missed week 3 with an ankle injury, and so far, he's thrown for 967 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. No, that's not the prettiest stat line whatsoever. But before you go hitting the panic button, I'd really just take a breath because there's been plenty of bad rookie quarterbacks that have gone on to be fine in this league. A bad rookie season very rarely matters that much. Now, the poster child that everyone goes to when talking about a bad rookie season and going on to be an all-time great is Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was not good in his rookie season. He threw 28 interceptions, and it was rough. But as we know now, that worked out for him. His brother Eli wasn't really even much better in games that he played in as a rookie. You got guys like Alex Smith who are really bad. Matthew Stafford was bad. It really doesn't matter how bad you are as a rookie. All those quarterbacks I just referenced at least went on to have a good amount of success in their career. So Bryce Young having a down rookie year really isn't anything to panic about. Just relax. Now, there are plenty of problems with the Carolina Panthers roster. Like I said before, it is an untalented roster, not a lot on there. Probably the biggest issue that you can see week in and week out is that this team needs a top wide receiver in-house ASAP. And I'd say they're even in the market for one right now. There are a few teams that make sense for a trade and stuff like that. Pretty much all of them are bad teams. If the Bengals keep struggling, which it seems like they're turning it around, but if they do continue to struggle, T. Higgins might be on the move. He has been banged up somewhat this season, but he's been good and he's on the last year of his rookie deal. So at the very least, if you do somehow manage to have a trade with the Bengals to land him, he will be cheap. Then you got Cardinals wide receiver Marquise Brown, who's about to be a free agent. I like Marquise Brown. I think he's solid, but it really does feel like if you went on and picked him up, it wouldn't change your team that much. It feels like picking up another very good but not great wide receiver. And frankly, this team needs a great wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy is under contract for 2024, and he's always involved in trade rumors. I like Jerry Jeudy. I feel like he has a lot of potential to be a really good wide receiver in this league, but the drops have killed him over his career, and I'm sure how he's handling the back end of his time in Denver isn't too appealing for other front offices. Regardless though, it would be a good pickup and it would immediately improve their team. Now, this next one is kind of a reach. To see this happening is pretty far-fetched. Davante Adams. He's on a huge 5-year, $141 million deal with the Raiders, so he would be very expensive, but to act like he wouldn't come in and immediately make an impact on this team is ludicrous. He would come in and just completely change the passing game for this team. Granted, that doesn't change how bad the offensive line is or how bad everything else is, but having that number one connection with a wide receiver that can constantly get open would be a huge help for him. Now, another team that's bad is the Bears, so maybe give him a call about DJ Moore. That's never gonna happen. I mean, they traded for DJ Moore when they got that first overall pick. The Bears have a death grip on that man. They're not letting him go anywhere. They love him. I think the saddest thing about that though is that it does feel like the whole wide receiver room would be much better if they did still have more. But then again, if you still had more, you probably wouldn't have had the first overall pick and been able to land Bryce Young. So there were some pros and cons to that trade, but the trade will no doubt hurt the Panthers a lot if Bryce Young doesn't end up being good. If you remember that trade, they traded a lot to get that first overall pick. They gave up the 9th overall pick, which the Bears then traded with the Eagles, who went on to select Jalen Carter, a 2024 first, which if they continue to be this bad is going to be first overall, aka Caleb Williams, the 61st overall pick, which is Jaguars tight end Brenton Strange, and a 2025 second. The Bears really did get a haul for that first overall pick, as they should have. But if Bryce Young doesn't turn it around either later this season or next year, looking back, that's going to be a bonehead trade from the Carolina Panthers. Now, it's not like the Panthers did nothing in the offseason after getting that first overall pick and then getting Bryce Young. They did try to add a few wide receivers to the team that were viewed as pretty good. Adam Thielen got signed, and so did DJ Chark. Now, those are both two wide receivers that have had plenty of success in the past. I mean, I think DJ Chark only has one 1,000-yard season, but still both good wide receivers that were supposed to come in and elevate this passing game. It's only been 6 games, but I think they've been just about what you could have expected them to be. Nothing too good, nothing too flashy, but solid. And that just kind of feels like it's the whole team. Kind of solid, but not good enough to win games. I mean, maybe Jonathan Mingo can slowly develop into what the Panthers need him to be. He was a 2023 second out of Ole Miss. He could be good, but so far just haven't seen it. Now, of course, a huge reason for why Bryce Young is not performing well is the offensive line. It's not good. He's under pressure a lot, and I know coming out of college, a big point to his game was his escapability or being able to extend plays with his legs. But so far this season, it just feels like other rookie quarterbacks, CJ Stroud has done a much better job doing it, even though he didn't show a lot of it in college, and Bryce Young did. I just don't know if the current play calling in Carolina is really optimizing the talent talent that Bryce Young has. I think they could do a lot of things different that would make him look better. I don't love some of the personnel decisions on some of the plays they run, and frankly, I just don't think they have the roster to fulfill some of the things that they're trying to accomplish on the field. I just don't think their wide receivers are good enough. I think the run game could be solid with Miles Sanders if the offensive line wasn't literally garbage, and the defense is a very, very fine unit. It's not anything insane. They get burned. It happens. They're fine. But fine's not going to win you anything in the NFL. Clearly, it hasn't for the Panthers, considering they haven't won a single game yet this year. Now, I know I'm being a little bit harsh, but frankly, this season doesn't really matter too much. This is purely a season based off of just seeing growth from Bryce Young and growth from the team. I do have some faith in head coach Frank Reich. I like him. I think he kind of got shafted in Indianapolis with all the quarterback turnover. Outside of that, Indianapolis should have been really good under him. But you know, that Andrew Luck retiring thing just completely screwed him. Now he's in Carolina and he's got that quarterback of the future with Bryce Young, who I did like in college, and he should be able to succeed in this league. They're just things that he does week in and week out that I see, little flashes here or there. They're not consistent whatsoever, but when I see them, I'm just like, man, this kid could be so damn good. But unfortunately, the team around him isn't. And that's going to continue to hold Bryce Young back. Now, I know some Panthers fans are itching towards pressing that panic button. It's been a lot of disappointment over the past couple of years, but it's only week 6, and this dude's a rookie, so just give him time.